In today's video, we're going to start out by creating a disposable cup dispenser. This video is catered more for beginner / intermediate Blender artists. I do expect you to know the very basics of Blender, how to move around, what an extrude is, and that kind of thing. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. First order of business is to come in here and clear our scene. And what I want to do is I want to bring in a circle mesh primitive. And for the case of this example, I want 6 vertices. And I'm going to get the size roughly about the size that I measured for these cups. So what we're doing is we're creating these plastic cups to start out with. The reason why I chose 6-sided vertices or 6-sided object here is because the bottom of the cup is shaped like this. So, but what I want to do is because I want the top to be a circle, let's go in here and let's start adding in some vertices. So we'll have more geometry that we can build from at the top. Now that we've got that done, let's go ahead and extrude this up. Now, extrusion is going to take these vertices that are flat with no geometry, and this is now giving us some geometry to work with. Because you see them in yellow, that means they're selected. I want to scale these at the top to make it a little bit wider because the cup that I'm using as reference is larger at the top than in the bottom. Now I'm going to create something called a loop cut, which is basically I'm adding a line of vertices in here that's going to give us some more geometry in the middle of this shape. And I'm making it or scaling it out using the bevel function to as wide as I think it should be, matching it to my reference images. Now I'm going to add in some segments. So basically I'm taking that selection and splitting it up. I want to go into edit mode with the edge selection tool or the number 2 on the top part of the keyboard. I'm using Control B for bevel to scale it out. And now I'm going back in holding down the Alt key on the keyboard and left clicking. And I'm grabbing all these bottom edges. And what you're going to see me doing is I'm getting this shape. So I'm holding down S and then just dragging it because I'm scaling those bottom ones in to give the cup that grippy design. And just like that, we've got it done. Now that we have that done, what I want to do is make sure I'm still in edit mode. And I want to grab these edges here at the top, going to Loop Tools, which is a plugin that comes included with Blender. You just have to enable it. And I'm going to grab all of these edges because I want all these pieces here at the top to be rounded. The only piece I still want to have that 6-sided shape is at the very bottom of the cup. So I'm selecting all of these edge loops that make up this grippy shape, plus the top edge of the cup here. And then once I have them all selected, I will right mouse click, choose Loop Tools, and then circle. And just like that, you got a circular shape to the top in the middle of your cup, and it only tapers angular down at the bottom. This is exactly what we wanted. So now let's deal with the bottom of the cup. So I'm going to go into edit mode. I'm going to hold down Alt and click. It's going to grab all these edges that denote the bottom. I'm going to hit E for extrude. And at the same time, before I move, I'm going to hit S, and that's going to scale it inward. So it's going to extrude into each other. It's a good way to start closing stuff off. And then I'm going to hit Command F and then grid fill. It's going to fill all that open area right there with quad shape topology. It's just going to make it nice and clean. Now what I want to do is I want to generate a circle right here at the bottom. So I'm going to hold down Command and plus after I select that face. The way I select the face is edit and then hit the number 3 at the top of the keyboard. And now I got that shape. I want to hit I for inset. I'm going to do an inset because what I'm trying to do is create like a barrier or a protective fence around that selection. Now I'm going to hit E and on Z because I'm going to restrict it on the Z axis, and I'm pushing it up as you see here. So now we've got the cup where it's got like this little round divot area where the inside where you see the molded plastic, it pushes up inside of the cup a little bit. And that's basically how I made that shape there. And now what I want to do, because we have such long faces, I want to make those faces shorter. So I'm going to put some edge loops in here so that these faces up here are not so long, because that'll help us sculpt the cup a lot nicer. It won't look long and you don't get weird artifacts and stuff in your geometry if you basically equalize the way that the length of the faces or the size of them. Make them more, try to get them as square as possible, but you don't want really elongated faces because you get weird stuff. So now I'm going to go here and select these edges. I'm going to do a tight little bevel, and that's going to restrict where subsurface modifier can affect the mesh, if that makes sense. I've talked about this in like all my videos. And then up here, I'm going to select these edges, and I'm going to do a bit bigger bevel because I want this to nicely smooth off, but I'm still controlling how much it smooths once we apply the subdivision surface modifier. Now I want to go back to the top of the cup, grab that top edge, and what I want to do is hit extrude and S to scale it out, and then I want to just hit extrude and Z to bring it down, because if you look at the design of the cup, that's literally what the plastic does. It comes up, it flares out at the top, and then it goes down, and that's where the lip of the cup, that's how it's designed. And we're just mimicking that in 3D. So now I'm back in the object mode, kind of looking over the work we've done so far, looking at it in front orthographic mode, because I like to work in orthographic view because it's definitely straight. Now I'm going to add the sub D, or subdivision surface modifier. And if you look at the little notes I'm putting down here in the video, you can see a lot of the keyboard shortcuts that I'm adding in here. And I'm going to also add in shade smooth so you can, you know, it just looks a little nicer, looks a little bit more realistic. Now from here, I want to select these edges because it looks a little soft when looking at the subdivision surface modifier turned on. So I'm selecting all these edges, and I'm going to put a subtle crease on them. A crease is a little bit different than a bevel, but you could have used a bevel as well. One thing to note here is I'm hitting Shift E to do this. You can also use the menu on the side I call the N panel to manually put in a number there. Don't get too crazy with the creasing, because creasing can make things look way too sharp if you go all the way, and it can also cause artifacts. So I just gave it a nice little creasing just to help define it more. So when the light hits this, it'll look more realistic. Okay, I turned on face orientation here, and that's basically showing you the normals. Red means that it's flipped, blue is what you should see. So the reason why we're seeing this is we don't have any solidify turned on this cup. So I just use a modifier to do it. And if you notice, it looks kind of weird. So I'm going into my modifier stack and I'm dragging solidify to the top and subdivision at the bottom. And now from here, I'll just adjust the settings of solidify, and now everybody's blue and all is good in the world. Next up, we're going to create the procedural material for the cup. We're creating this paraffin-like clear plastic. And what I want to do is I'm just using my viewport here, and I'm dragging it over to two windows. On the left-hand side, I want to be able to see my object in what they call look dev mode, or EV mode, or materials preview mode. And then on the right-hand side, I want to see the shader editor, which is where we're going to put this material together in. Now what I want to do is bring in a glossy BDSF node. That's going to add that white sheen plastic look to my material. And in order to glue these together so they merge or work together, I got to bring in a mix shader. I also want to change the transmission and crank it up to 1 under weight or close to 1. And also change the index of refraction, or the way the light hits it, to 1.460, which if you look that up, that's the index of refraction of plastic. All right, so now that that's done, the next thing to do on the order of business here is to bring in a plane and scale it down. This is going to be the little spring-loaded platform that goes inside of the dispenser. I want to bring in some levels of subdivision in here. And the way I repeated it so fast, I hit Shift R a number of times, X number of times, and that would subdivide again and then again. And then I'm going to do my Control Plus trick, get the size that I want that circle to be, relatively the size I want that circle to be, and then go into Loop Tools, hit Circle. Now I want to put a protective fence around it, which I'm going to do my I for inset. And notice I'm not going to go too far as you get overlap in geometry, which causes tearing in your geometry. Now, a little trick here is if I hit the O key after I hit the I key, that will inset on the outside boundary of it. You see, I'm kind of tweaking it so I don't overshoot my landing, and I'm insetting it again, because what we can do later is we can relax that geometry. It looks really tight in there, in edit mode for vertices. And you'll see we're going to do a little bit of that here in a minute. Right now, what I'm trying to accomplish is I'm going to hit the Control key and click around this section here, and Blender knows what I'm trying to select. So I'm trying to select these faces here, because what I want to do is I want to extrude them up. This is going to be like the little wall where the lip of the cup fits down in there, and you can stack the cups on top of each other. So every time the little spring-loaded thing comes up, you get a new cup, it shoots up to the top. That's what we just did. We just made that piece. Now, these things right here have notches cut out in them, so we're just going to cut them out of the geometry. So I'm going to select the faces and hit X for delete, and I choose faces because it's the faces that we want to delete. And that's done. So now I'm looking at it in perspective mode so I can get a good feel of what this thing is looking like. And notice, so it's just a flat plane. It doesn't have any depth to it yet. So I'm going to go in here and select these here, these faces, and I'm going to do my Command plus or Control plus move right here. Now I'm going to hit, once I got everything selected, including that wall and that boundary right there, that inset boundary, I'm going to hit Command I or Control I if you're on Windows to do the inverse. So it makes an inverse selection. Now from here, I'm going to hit extrude, bring it up, give it some depth. I'm not trying to be too detailed with this because you're not going to see it. Well, if you look at that dispenser from top angle, you'll see that there's something there. But we're not modeling the inside of the dispenser to spec. So you don't need to do the spring or any of that stuff. I'm just doing some checks. I'm hitting Shift in. That recalculates normals. Because a lot of times when you do extrude, sometimes you get weird normals. So that's just a fail safe. If you think you may have gone too far, you can also hit M as in Mike and then merge by distance, and that will get rid of any overlapping geometry you may have. Now this section here, you can see I'm relaxing some of this geometry. And essentially what I'm doing is I'm pulling these vertices away from each other. Just call it relaxing it. And what happens is this will make our geometry look a little nicer. You won't have weird pinching looks and stuff looking all cramped up and lighting hitting an angle a certain way all funky, like it's bent or twisted or something like that. That usually when you got vertices way too close together for that type of shape, you get weird artifacts when it tries to render it. So I'm just pulling them away, giving them some breathing room, if you will, and then it just nice distribution of vertices. That's, you can kind of look at it like that. So I want to go here at the top, pick a few of them that just, at least to me, look a little too close. It doesn't change anything. They still stay as quad faces or face with 4 sides to it. Like I said, we're just moving them a little bit apart, just a little bit, so they get a little bit of breathing room and we don't have any weird looking stuff when we go to render this out. And just like that, we are done. There's a platform. So now what I want to do is I want to take the cup, drag it over on top of that little platform lip, and just kind of give it a look to make sure it looks okay. I think it's centered, but you know, I'm going to move it over to the left a little bit more. Looks a little off. That's close enough. There you go. And I'm going to do something offline, which here you go, by the magic of YouTube. I've done it. I put an inset around the edge of that platform. Make the geometry a little bit cleaner when we start working on the notches. And I've got a level 2 subdivision surface modifier on it, as you can see. And we're good with that. And just as a note, if you didn't see it down in the notes, we're done modeling the platform. So now, let's get to this final part, the dispenser itself. This is the container that's going to hold the little platform and all of the cups. And this is very, very easy. So basically, you could even start it out with a cube, which is essentially what we have here. I just took a plane and extruded it up, does the same thing. My version, you got to check normals, but same thing. And then I'm going to taper off the top to make it a little smaller than the bottom. And I'm going to extrude it up a little bit more because I'm just kind of forcing that rounded top shape. Extrude just a little bit and then scale it in, as you can see here. And that I'm defining that shape. Now I got this top here. I'm going to inset it in. We're eventually going to turn this square into a circle. In this particular instance, because we have such long faces, I'm going to go ahead and put in some loop cuts here in a second. I'm going to go ahead and start sculpting in the bottom as well. Bunch of insets just to give it a good amount of geometry so it renders nice. And I want to push this selection here that I'm making up using extrude up in it. And you're going to see it's going to give it a nice little lip there at the bottom. And I'm hitting Z to make sure it stays constricted on that Z axis or straight up and down. Normally, if I wanted these faces to stay long, I would do more detail by what they call localizing my geometry. In this case, I don't really care. Let's just put loop cuts across the whole thing. And you may say, how do I know how many cuts to put in here? Just do what looks clean. And if you notice, I go horizontal a certain amount and now I'm going vertical a certain amount. What I'm trying to do is create a grid that looks, each of these little pieces of the grid look for the most part square and not too rectangular. And that's really good. That'd be really good clean geometry. Now I'm coming in here, I'm doing my Command plus, Control plus trick, doing my inset, and I'm gonna turn this into a circle. This is gonna be the opening where the cups pop out. So I got the shape, I'm gonna scale it down just a little bit so it's not too close to that edge. And I'm gonna hit X and delete faces. So now we got to open and our cup's gonna pop out of the dispenser here. So now I wanna bring in a solidify modifier. I'm used to using the Q menu, which is a feature built into Blender where you can put all your quick favorite commands in there. So depending on what mode you're in, there could be different commands and you don't have to go through the menus and find it. But for the sake of the video, I went through the menu to show you. Now I'm running a level 3 subdivision surface modifier. And now I just want to see what this looks like. So now I can kind of come in and start grabbing some of these edges when I just disable sub D. So I can go back to the blocky look here. And I want to turn it on again because I want to see how my bevels here are going to affect it in real time. That's why you keep seeing me go back and forth with disabling sub D and re-enabling it. I disable it so I can see what I'm actually selecting, and then I re-enable to see how my change affects it. This is literally all I'm doing. That looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. We're going to do shade smooth. And I need to come here at the top and define that opening a little bit. So I'll grab that edge there and I'm just going to run a nice little bevel on it. Nothing too fancy. And just like that, we have ourselves a dispenser. Now it looks a little tall as compared to the cup. I didn't want my dispenser this tall, so I'm going to go in here in a second in the edit mode again for the dispenser, and I'm just going to resize it. go in here real quick and edit this thing. So I'm in edit mode and now I'm scaling it down on the Z axis. And the reason why I go to edit mode first instead of just scaling it is it just saves me a click of having to reset my scale. Because if you don't do that, you get weird stuff with your model. So now I'm in X-ray mode. I want to bring the cup and the platform down. I just I can see it through the outline. I just want to kind of get it positioned in a good little spot that looks realistic like the real thing does. And just like that, we've got it done. So now what we want to do is we only have one cup. I want multiple cups, but I don't want to have to scale all of these cups out or make them again or copy them or anything weird like that. So we're going to use the power of Blender to do this. We're going to do this programmatically using an array modifier. And as you see, when I turn that on, I moved it above my subsurface modifier, which is important. And I'm going to show the count or the iteration of cups that we want to have here. Now, one thing that's important, if you look at offset, it started on the X with a value of 1. Now, I want to go up instead of down, and it's looking at the global axes here. So I'm going to do -1, which means every iteration will go upward versus down, and then I adjust that value. And what I'm doing is holding down the shift key and just kind of dragging with my mouse, because I want the cups to look like they're stacked one on top of another like you would see in the real world. So I'm zooming in so I can get a better look at it, and then I go back in here under the Z offset, and I'm just kind of tweaking it. And I hold down shift because it gives me smaller increments. It doesn't blow past larger increments like it would if you did not hold down the shift key. And that looks pretty good to me. I can even add more if I wanted to, but I just don't want to. I just think we get the point. And I'm cranking up the render so it renders at a level 3 subdivision, as well as levels viewport. Viewport only shows you what it looks like in the viewport. So if you have a slower computer, you can crank that down to 3. Crank that down to like 2, but you can render it out at 3, 4, 5, 6 without having to lag your viewport. So now what we need to do is we need to create a material for the dispenser itself. And guys, I'm gonna keep this as simple as possible. So we're gonna do basically the same setup as we did before with a little bit of tweak. So I'm just gonna change the color, give it like a, I don't know, like an off yellow color, like a dingy yellow, if you will. It's gonna be plastic, so we're gonna do the same procedural trick as we did with the cups, but we're not gonna add the transmission in there. So I've got the principle set up. Now I'm gonna bring in a glossy BDSF. And then, like I said, in order to glue these together, you gotta do a mix shader node. So I'm gonna plug that in there. I'm gonna put the glossy in the second node thing there. And you can clearly see how it gave it a little bit of plastic sheen when I made that change. I'm changing my IOR, my index of refraction. In other words, the way light reflects off of particular materials. You can look that up online. And I'm gonna change the factor because if I go left, it gives more bias to the thing that's in the top socket. If I move more right, that gives bias or the effect, more of the effect to the thing in the bottom socket. So that's what that factor is changing there in that instance. So I'm gonna be a little lazy. I'm gonna take the platform and make it literally the same material as the dispenser itself. Now I re-enable a view of the dispenser, and just like that, we are done modeling and creating materials for the actual thing that we're making for the video. One other thing I do want to do real quick is bring in a backdrop. So I'm bringing in a plain mesh primitive. I'm going to scale it up. I'm going to hold down S and then 10, which scales up 10 times the size. Just a little, a little life hack for Blender. And what I want to do is I want to bring the dispenser, the cups, and the platform down to sit right on top of that line. See, there's a little air gap between it. I'm just going to bring everybody down. Boop, sit it right there on that line. Because I don't want any air gap there because you'll be able to clearly see it's fake. Now I'm going to go in here because we're not adding any textures or anything to it. It can be flat. I don't need to do a bunch of subdivision. So I'll grab all these edges and I'm extruding them upward on the Z axis. And then I'm going to hold down the left button and shift and then drag all these edges right here. And I'm going to bevel them. And if you see my bevels look kind of flat there, that's because the profile shape is set to 1. Now, if you change it to 0.5 or something smaller, it rounds it off a little bit more. And then I can just change the width and it changes the amount of bevel that I'm actually applying to this. So just a little quick tip, that's how that works. And we have a classic backdrop. I'm gonna do a shade smooth. Next, what we want to start doing is setting up our scene, and this is the fun part. We're right at the end of our video. So first thing I want to do is change my render engine to cycles. And let's give it a quick preview. Now that menu I hit the Z as in Zulu key, and then you can switch between your wireframe, solid, material, and render mode. It's very quick. Another hack or trick or shortcut, I guess is the best word for that. Now what I want to do is I want to bring in an area light. I personally like working with area lights. You may choose a different light, and that's fine. You may want a point light or a sunlight or something. But for the case of the video, I'm just going to do area light. Very common with like product shots. You could also use an HDRI to light this scene as well, or a combination of them. And what you'll see that I'm doing now is I'm just positioning the light. I'm gonna start with one light and see what it looks like, because it looks a little dark in the background, but I don't want to set the power too high because it does something called blowing out the scene. So you have too much light and then detail will be missing because the light is so intense. I'd rather just bring in multiple lights and tweak them, dial them back and tweak them to make the scene look evenly lit or look more lit in a certain area, depending on what kind of look I'm trying to get. And I don't really have anything in mind for this scene because it's a disposable cup dispenser. I guess you could argue like some of the talent comes in when you can make something as kind of bland as a disposable cup dispenser look really good, like a product somebody would buy. Now I'm not doing that in this video, but you'll get the point. All right, so now hit Option, Command, and numpad 0, meaning the 0 on the far right of your keyboard and number pad. That brings in the camera. So if I happen to see a particular view I like in my viewport, I hit that key combination, it pops the camera right there at that viewpoint. It's not perfect, but it's pretty close. So now what I'm doing is I'm going in here in my camera settings. I choose a camera in my outliner. Outliner is a little thing on the side where our little icons and all your little parts where your scene are. I go in the camera icon, which is down at the bottom, and then I start manipulating my camera. Notice I changed my focal length to 80. I like working with images around between 80 and 90 because I just think it's a good focal length to work from. It's more realistic to what if you were a product photographer or a portrait photographer, you're going to be shooting somewhere around between 50 and like 80, 85, somewhere around in there, depending on how close you are to a subject or how far back you are from a subject to get a nice blur background or bokeh effect. I just like shooting from that. So right now, all I'm really doing, I mean, we're done with like the hard work. All I'm doing right now is just positioning lights and just trying to set up a good looking lit scene that we can render from. And the rendering is the very last part. So now let's go ahead and do that. That's good enough. So I'm going to hit render and render image. Keep in mind, we changed everything to cycles. It's going to give us a real-time ray tracing viewport, and there it is. We've got it rendered. So if you guys have followed on so far, you ought to be good to go. But I'm not really happy with that view, and I'm going to show you something else that you can do. So I'm going to hit the N key. N is in November on the keyboard. I'm going to go to View and Camera to View. So now when I drag around, it keeps my camera there, but it lets me readjust the movement of my camera to kind of tweak my shot. You got to remember to turn this off though, because once you start moving around the scene again, it'll change that camera view. I'm going to just dial back that backdrop, make it a little bit darker color. And after all the work, and I finally did my render, there's my finished product. If you guys have kept along this far and made it to this far in the video, give yourself a big pat on the back. I didn't want to make this video too simple, but I wanted to make it more for new artists. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. There'll be much more stuff coming. If you like this content and things like this, please do me a favor and like, subscribe, and click that notification bell for more videos that'll be coming up soon. You guys, as always, did a fantastic job, and I will see you on the next video. Peace.